Hello sleepy soul and welcome back to our channel. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe and comment down below your name, country and time that you are watching this video at. Enjoy. I never thought I'd be the person neighbors whisper about at the mailbox, but here we are. Let me backtrack. 3 months ago, my husband and I moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood. Our next-door neighbors, the Garcias, seemed friendly. At first, they brought over cookies, complimented our garden, and even offered to lend us tools. But things soured quickly when we installed motion-activated floodlights and a security camera facing our driveway. For context, our old apartment was broken into twice, and I've been paranoid about security ever since. The camera points mostly at our driveway and the edge of our front yard, but it does partially capture the Garcia's front porch and walkway. I didn't think much of it until Mr. Garcia stormed over, red-faced, demanding we take it down. "You're spying on us," he yelled. I apologized and explained it was for safety, not surveillance, and offered to show him the camera's feed to prove it only saves footage when motion is detected. He refused, calling it an invasion of privacy, and threatened to sue. We thought that was the end of it, but the next day Mrs. Garcia posted on the neighborhood Facebook group, "New neighbors are recording our kids. Keep your cameras." "Off our property," comments flooded in. Some folks defended us, they're just protecting their home, but others accused us of creepy behavior. One person even claimed we were probably profiling the Garcias, who are Latino, though our camera's angle had nothing to do with their ethnicity. Trying to de-escalate, we adjusted the camera to minimize their porch visibility. But here's where I might be the a-hole. A week later, someone keyed my husband's car parked in our driveway. The camera caught a blurry figure in a hoodie, but their face was obscured. When we shared the footage in the Facebook group asking if anyone recognized the person, the Garcias flipped out. "See, you're still filming our house," Mr. Garcia shouted, even though the footage clearly showed the vandal darting across our property. The situation exploded when their 10-year-old son, Mateo, told his parents we'd recorded him playing basketball in their driveway. Mrs. Garcia showed up at our door, shaking, saying, "We don't consent to you filming our child. Delete the footage or we're calling the police." I explained that the camera only activates near our property, but she didn't care. "You're traumatizing him," she said. That night, they hung a tarp between our yards to block the camera's view, which now looks like a glaring middle finger to the whole street. Our other neighbors are divided. The elderly couple across the street praised our vigilance, but the family next to the Garcias put up a sign saying, "Predators live here," with an arrow pointing to our house. The HOA sent a warning about neighborly conduct, though our camera technically complies with community rules. My husband wants to take it down to avoid drama, but I'm stubborn. Why should we compromise our safety because the Garcias won't listen to reason? The final straw. Last weekend, the Garcias hosted a block party and didn't invite us. Everyone else on the street was there, grilling and laughing in their backyard while we sat inside, blinds closed. My husband's furious, saying, "This feud isn't worth it, but I feel like caving sets a precedent that bullies win. Plus, if we remove the camera and something does happen, we'll regret it." But now I'm second-guessing. A mum from the neighborhood DM'd me privately, saying, "The Garcias' last neighbors moved because of culture clashes. They're overly sensitive." But another neighbor told me the Garcias' previous home had a swastika painted on their garage, so their privacy fears might be rooted in real trauma. Did I dismiss their concerns too quickly? Should I have repositioned the camera immediately, even if it left our driveway vulnerable? My brother says I'm not responsible for their baggage, but my best friend thinks I'm being territorial. "A camera isn't worth your peace," she argued. Am I the a-hole for refusing to remove it entirely, or are the Garcias overreacting? I never wanted to be the neighborhood villain, but I also don't want to feel unsafe in my own home. I'm spiraling over whether I've ruined a lifelong friendship. Here's the deal. My best friend Tara and I have been inseparable since 3rd grade. We survived college long distance, stood by each other through breakups, and even got matching tattoos at 21. Soulmates platonically. But last month I got a job offer that's torn us apart, and I'm terrified I've become the villain in our story. The job is my dream role, creative director at a boutique marketing agency. The catch? It's the same position Tara applied, Forrent assumed she'd get after freelancing for the company for 2 years. Tara had been hyping this job for months, telling everyone, including me, that the CEO, Daniel, had all but promised her the role. She'd even picked out office decor ideas. Here's where it gets messy. I've been unemployed for 6 months after my previous company downsized. Tara encouraged me to apply for freelance gigs at her agency to get back on my feet. I submitted my portfolio, not expecting much, but Daniel loved my work. We had 3 interviews, and out of nowhere he offered me the creative director role. My stomach dropped. I asked him, "Are you sure Tara isn't in the running?" He shrugged and said, "She's great, but we need someone with your strategic vision." I called Tara immediately, panicking. She laughed and said, "Wait, are you serious? Daniel's messing with you." When I sent her the offer letter, she went silent for a full minute before whispering, "You're actually considering stealing this from me." I tried to explain I hadn't even known the job was open, but she hung up. That night, Tara's mom called me. Yes, her mom. She said, "Tara's been crying all day. How could you betray her like this, after she helped you?" I felt nauseous, but told her I needed the job. My savings were drained and my partner was shouldering all our bills. She snapped, "Tara's been freelancing there for years. You've been there 5 minutes." I accepted the job. Tara posted a passive-aggressive Instagram story. "When you think someone's your ride or die, but they'd rather run you over." Our mutual friends started picking sides. One group chat accused me of using Tara's connections to leapfrog her, while others said, "It's business, she needs to grow up." The office is now a war zone. Tara refuses to speak to me, delegating all communication through Slack. Last week, she accidentally CC'd me on an email to Daniel, criticizing my first campaign draft as out of touch. I confronted her privately, and she smirked. "Just giving feedback, boss." Things escalated when I discovered Tara had been bad-mouthing me to clients. A major client emailed Daniel asking to reassign their account to someone more professional, citing personal grievances Tara had shared. Daniel called us into a meeting and said, "Fix this, or I'll have to let one of you go." Tara burst into tears and said, "I've given this company everything. Now I'm being punished for her greed." I'm at a breaking point. My partner says Tara's manipulating everyone, but my sister thinks I should quit. "You're losing. Friends over a job you didn't even want 6 months ago," she said. "But here's the thing. I love this job. I'm good at it. For the first time in years, I feel challenged and valued. But Tara's turned our entire community against me. Our friends' wedding invites have dried up. My birthday came and went, with no text from anyone but my mom. The final blow. Tara's dad cornered me at the grocery store. "You've known Tara since you were kids," he said. "Her mental health is in the gutter. Is this job worth destroying her?" I didn't know what to say. I've started therapy over the guilt, but my therapist says, "You didn't take anything. You earned it." Am I the a-hole for prioritizing my career over a 20-year friendship? Or is Tara's reaction justified because I should have known better than to apply? I never wanted to hurt her, but I also can't shake the feeling that she'd have taken the job in a heartbeat if our roles were reversed. I'm drowning in guilt and rage right now, and I need to know if I'm the problem here. Last year, my dad passed away unexpectedly. He left behind his beloved 1967 Ford Mustang, which he'd spent a decade restoring. Growing up, that car was his pride and joy. He'd take me and my brother Kyle to car shows, teaching us about engines and letting us help, read, hand him tools. When his will was read, he left the Mustang to me along with a note. "Take care of Betsy, she's family." Kyle, who'd always been closer to Dad, lost it. He screamed at me in the lawyer's office. "You barely visited him. You didn't even call on his birthday last year." For context, I'd been backpacking in New Zealand with no cell service, which Dad knew about. Kyle accused me of manipulating Dad into giving me the car, which isn't true. Dad and I bonded over the restoration when Kyle moved out of state. Fast forward to last month. Kyle called asking to borrow the Mustang for his wedding. His fiancée Sarah had always loved it, and he wanted to surprise her by arriving at the ceremony in it. I hesitated. The car is irreplaceable and Kyle's never been careful with Dad's things, but I agreed on 2 conditions. No alcohol near it and he'd cover any damage. He swore up and down he'd treat it like a newborn baby. The wedding day arrives. I drop off the car, and Kyle's best man, Derek, signs a checklist I made: mileage, scratches, fuel level. The ceremony goes smoothly, but at the reception I notice Kyle and his groomsmen doing shots. I text him, "Remember, no drinking and driving." He replies, "Relax, Derek's driving it back to you tonight." At 1 a.m., I get a call from Derek. He's slurring. "Dude, I'm so sorry, at the car," and I race to the hotel. The Mustang's front end is crumpled against a lamppost. Derek admits he'd a few drinks and swerved to avoid a raccoon. Kyle storms over, yelling, "Why'd you make Derek drive it? He's not used to classic cars." I snap back, "You promised no alcohol. The insurance claim is a nightmare." Because Derek was driving, my policy might not cover it. The repairs could cost $30K plus, which I don't have. Kyle offered $5K, saying, "It's just a car. Dad's gone. Get over it." I blew up and told him he'd never get the keys again, even if it's fixed. Now the family's split. Our aunt says, "Your dad would have wanted you to forgive." But Mom's on my side. Kyle knew the rules. Sarah sent a tearful email begging me not to ruin Kyle's marriage, claiming he's too ashamed to face me. Worse, Kyle's started telling relatives I care more about a hunk of metal than family, and some are buying it. My cousin posted, "Let it go. It's what Dad would have wanted." But here's why I might be the a-hole. At the funeral, Kyle confessed he'd planned to propose to Sarah in the Mustang. Dad knew and told him, "After the wedding, it's yours." I have no proof. Dad's note explicitly left it to me, but Kyle's convinced Dad meant for him to have it eventually. Part of me wonders if I'm clinging to the car to hurt Kyle for being the favorite all these years. Last week, I listed the wrecked Mustang online for parts. Kyle showed up at my house sobbing, "You're erasing Dad's legacy." I coldly said, "You erased it when you let Derek get drunk." He hasn't spoken to me since. Am I the a-hole for refusing to forgive him and scrapping the car, or is Kyle the one who betrayed Dad's trust? I can't tell if I'm standing on principle or just being spiteful. I, 32mm, have been with my fiancée, Lisa, 29F, for 3 years, and we recently got engaged. For some background, I come from a well-off family. My parents are financially comfortable, and I had a privileged upbringing. Lisa, on the other hand, had a rough childhood, growing up in a single-parent household with financial struggles. Despite that, she worked hard, put herself through college, and now has a stable career in marketing. The issue started when we began discussing wedding plans. My parents offered to pay for a significant portion of the wedding, which I was grateful for, but Lisa was hesitant. She wanted us to pay for it ourselves, saying she didn't want to feel like she owed them anything. While I understood her perspective, I also felt like it was unnecessary to turn down a generous offer, especially since weddings are expensive. I tried to reassure her that my parents had no ulterior motives, that they just wanted to help us start our marriage without financial strain, but Lisa kept insisting that she didn't feel comfortable accepting money from them, saying it gave them too much power over our wedding. Things escalated when we started planning the guest list. My parents insisted on inviting some of their business associates and family friends, which I thought was reasonable since they were footing a large part of the bill. Lisa, however, was furious. She said she didn't want strangers at our wedding, especially people she had never met. I tried to explain that it was a small price to pay for having a lavish wedding, but she accused me of letting my parents control our big day. I reminded her that weddings are about family and community, and that it was normal for parents to invite their friends. But she saw it as an overreach, saying that if my parents got to dictate the guest list, then it wasn't really our wedding anymore. It got worse when my mother suggested Lisa wear a family heirloom wedding dress. It had been passed down through generations, and my mum thought it would be a beautiful way to welcome Lisa into the family. Lisa, however, wanted to pick her own dress. She felt like she was being pressured into traditions that weren't hers, while I thought she was being ungrateful. After all, my mother was just trying to be kind. Lisa told me she had dreamed of picking her own dress since she was a child, that it was one of the most personal aspects of the wedding, and she didn't understand why she had to give up that choice just to please my mom. I tried to compromise by suggesting she wear the heirloom dress for part of the wedding, but she refused. saying she felt like she was losing her individuality in all of this. The final straw was the prenup. My parents strongly encouraged me to get one, as we have a lot of family wealth. I told Lisa it was just a formality and wouldn't change anything between us. She was deeply hurt, saying it felt like I didn't trust her. She pointed out that she had never asked for a cent from me, and that the prenup made her feel like an outsider in my family. I tried to explain that a prenup wasn't about trust, but about being responsible. She countered that if I truly believed her marriage would last forever, then there was no need for a prenup. She also said that bringing up a prenup so late in our engagement made her question whether I really saw us as equals. She felt like I was protecting my wealth from her, even though she had never given me any reason to think she was after my money. After weeks of arguments, Lisa told me that she felt like she was marrying into my family rather than marrying me. She said she wanted a partnership, not a financial agreement. I told her she was overreacting, and that all of this could be avoided if she just went with the flow. She called me selfish and said I wasn't considering her feelings. She started questioning if we were truly compatible, saying that if we couldn't agree on fundamental things like respect and autonomy, then what kind of marriage would we have? She even suggested postponing the wedding until we could get on the same page, which really hurt, because I thought we were ready to take this step. Now, some of my friends say she's being dramatic, but others say I'm not prioritizing my future wife. I just want to ensure financial security and have a wedding that pleases everyone. So am I the a-hole? I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, who has always been the golden child in our family. Growing up, she was given special treatment, always getting what she wanted, while I had to work for everything. Despite this, I have always tried to be a good sister to her, even when it felt like my efforts were never acknowledged or appreciated. Our parents have always doted on her, ensuring she never had to struggle, while I was expected to be independent from a young age. This dynamic has caused some resentment over the years, but I've always tried to rise above it. Last year, Emily got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Jake. I was genuinely happy for her, and I hoped that this milestone would bring us closer together. However, things started to go downhill when she began wedding planning. She wanted an extravagant wedding, complete with a luxury venue, designer dresses, and a lavish reception. Since my parents have always spoiled her, they agreed to pay for it without hesitation. However, Emily still expected me to contribute financially, even though I wasn't part of the decision-making process. She sent me a list of things she wanted me to pay for, including my bridesmaid dress, makeup, and part of the decorations. When I told her I couldn't afford to contribute to a wedding that I had no say in, she accused me of not being supportive. She told me that as her older sister, I should be honored to help make her dream wedding a reality, and that my refusal was proof that I was jealous of her happiness. She asked me to be her maid of honor, and I accepted, thinking it would be a nice bonding experience. However, it quickly became clear that she saw me as more of a personal assistant than a sister. She demanded that I handle everything, from organizing the bridal shower to helping with decorations and dress fittings. She even expected me to cover the costs of the bachelorette trip, which was absurdly expensive. When I told her I couldn't afford it, she called me selfish and accused me of not caring about her big day. She also expected me to take time off work for multiple pre-wedding events, without considering how it would impact my job and finances. She even complained that I wasn't enthusiastic enough when discussing the wedding, saying I should be grateful to be included in such an important event. At one point, she asked if I could take out a small loan to help fund the wedding expenses, claiming that it would be an investment in her happiness. I was floored. The breaking point came when Emily asked me to dye my hair for the wedding. I have naturally red hair, which she claimed would clash with the wedding colors. She wanted me to dye it a darker brown so I wouldn't stand out in photos. I refused, telling her that it was ridiculous to expect me to change my appearance for her wedding. She threw a fit, saying I was trying to ruin her perfect day. She even went as far as suggesting that I wear a wig if I was so attached to my hair color. I was stunned by her entitlement and how little she respected me as a person. She also complained that I wasn't losing enough weight for the wedding, hinting that I should try harder to fit into a certain size for the bridesmaid dress. This comment made me realize just how little she cared about my feelings. Things got even worse when I found out that she had been telling our family that I was being difficult and refusing to support her. My parents called me and told me to just do what Emily wants to keep the peace. I was furious that they were siding with her as usual, and I told them I was stepping down as maid of honor. This, of course, caused even more drama, with Emily crying and saying I was abandoning her. She even uninvited me from the wedding out of spite. She sent me a long message saying that I was no longer welcome unless I apologized for ruining everything and agreed to follow her demands. She then took to social media, making vague posts about how family should always support each other and how she was heartbroken by betrayal. Some of our extended family members reached out to me, asking why I was being so difficult, when all Emily wanted was a perfect day. It felt like I was being ganged up on simply for standing my ground. Now my family is divided. Some say I was right to set boundaries and stand up for myself, while others think I should have just gone along with it, for the sake of family harmony. My mom is begging me to apologize and just make things right, but I don't think I should. Have to apologize for having basic self-respect. My dad is staying out of it, saying he just wants everyone to get along, but I can tell he secretly agrees with my mum. Jake, Emily's fiancé, hasn't said much about the situation, but I heard from one of the bridesmaids that he thinks Emily is being unreasonable. However, he doesn't want to get involved because he knows how she is when she doesn't get her way. I suspect he's just trying to keep the peace before the wedding, but I wonder how long he'll be able to tolerate Emily's entitled behavior in the long run. I'm hurt that my sister would treat me this way, but I also don't want to be the reason for any more family tension. I feel like no matter what I do, I'm going to be seen as the villain in this situation. If I apologize, I'm letting Emily walk all over me. If I don't, I risk being estranged from my family. I've even considered skipping the wedding altogether and taking a small trip somewhere just to clear my head. The thought of sitting in that wedding, watching my sister bask in the attention while knowing how she treated me, makes me sick. So, am I the a-hole? I, 30 Mim, have been married to my wife, Lisa, 29F, for 5 years. Lisa and I have always had a strong relationship, but one major issue has been her best friend, Mia, 29F. Mia and I have never gotten along. She has always had a negative opinion of me, making snide comments about how Lisa settled and how she could have done so much better. Lisa has always defended me, but she never cut off Mia despite my discomfort. The situation recently escalated when Lisa and I found out we were expecting our first child. We were thrilled, and Lisa decided to have a small gender reveal party. We invited only close family and friends, and of course, Mia was on the guest list. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I kept my mouth shut for Lisa's sake. The day of the reveal, we had a simple but special setup. When it was time to pop the balloon revealing the gender, Mia suddenly stepped forward and popped it herself before Lisa and I could. Everyone gasped, and I stood there in shock as blue confetti rained down. Lisa looked stunned and embarrassed. Mia laughed and said she couldn't wait any longer and that she just had to know. It completely ruined the moment that was supposed to be ours. I was furious, but I kept my cool. I noticed Lisa's hands shaking slightly as she tried to compose herself. Some guests exchanged awkward glances, clearly realizing that Mia had crossed a line. After the party, I told Lisa that Mia had gone too far and that she needed to set boundaries. Lisa agreed that what Mia did was wrong, but said she didn't want to make a big deal out of it. That night I decided to message Mia and tell her that what she did was disrespectful and completely inappropriate. Instead of apologizing, she doubled down, saying I was being dramatic and that it was just a fun little joke. She even accused me of trying to control Lisa by making her choose between me and her friends. I was livid. Mia had no right to turn a moment between Lisa and me into her own spectacle. The next day I told Lisa that I was done with Mia. I said that I no longer wanted Mia in our lives and that if Lisa wanted to maintain their friendship, it would have to be without me. Lisa was upset and said that I was being too harsh. She agreed that Mia had crossed the line, but she didn't think it was worth ending their friendship over. I told her that I was setting a boundary and that I didn't want Mia around our child, if she couldn't respect me as Lisa's husband. I reminded her that this wasn't just about me. It was about the kind of people we wanted to surround our child with. Lisa said she needed time to think, and since then, there has been tension between us. She says she understands where I'm coming from, but she also doesn't want to throw away years of friendship over one mistake. Meanwhile, Mia has been playing the victim, telling their mutual friends that I'm controlling and overreacting. Now some of Lisa's friends are messaging her, telling her that I'm being unreasonable and making her choose between her marriage and her friendships. Mia even posted a vague status on social media about some people not being able to take a joke, which a few of her friends liked and commented on. I feel like I have every right to set this boundary, but now I'm second-guessing myself. Lisa is clearly struggling with the situation, and I don't want to be the reason she loses her best friend. However, I also don't want someone like Mia influencing our future child or disrespecting our relationship any further. Every time I see Mia's name pop up on Lisa's phone, I feel a mix of frustration and disappointment. It's not just about the gender reveal, it's about respect. So am I the a-hole? I, 33M, have been with my girlfriend Lauren, 30F, for 6 years, and for most of that time our relationship has been a safe haven from the chaos of the world. However, in the past year, things have taken a turn for the worse due to the overwhelming interference from her family. Lauren's parents, who have always been extremely involved in her life, have now taken it upon themselves to dictate how we should live, even though we're adults capable of making our own decisions. It all started subtly. At family gatherings, her parents would comment on how we should have a certain type of home decor, how our furniture should be arranged in a more proper way, and even suggested that we have more children sooner, rather than later. At first, I brushed it off as harmless advice given out of love, but as the months went by, their suggestions became more intrusive and started to affect our daily lives. One particular incident still stings. Last Christmas, while we were decorating our first home together, Lauren's mother, Carol, took it upon herself to rearrange our living room. I came home after work and found Carol moving my carefully chosen coffee table to what she deemed a more aesthetically pleasing spot. When I confronted her, she laughed it off and said, "I'm just trying to help, dear." I politely asked her to stop, but she persisted, and Lauren didn't back me up, insisting that her mother knew best. The feeling of powerlessness and frustration was palpable, and I began to wonder if I was overreacting or if something needed to change. As time went on, the situation escalated. Lauren's father, Tom, started calling me several times a week, asking for updates on our life and even offering unsolicited advice on our finances. He questioned my career choices and made disparaging remarks about my earnings, insinuating that Lauren deserved someone who could provide more. I tried to ignore it, hoping that as their concerns waned, things would return to normal. But nothing did. The breaking point came about 6 months ago. We had planned a small, intimate dinner party to celebrate our anniversary with a few close friends. Lauren was busy preparing, and I was setting the table when I received a text from her brother, Mark. The message was infuriating. He demanded that I postpone the party because he thought it was inappropriate for Lauren to be celebrating her anniversary with lesser company, while her parents were out of town on a vacation they had planned for months. Mark even went as far as to say that if Lauren wasn't home with the family, she was somehow neglecting her duties as a daughter. I was stunned and hurt by the blatant disrespect and the assumption that our celebration somehow trampled on their family values. Indine and I brought up the issue with Lauren that evening, but she was torn. On one hand, I had every right to feel disrespected and undermined, but on the other, I understood how deeply her family's opinions were ingrained in her. That night, our conversation turned into an argument. I expressed that I felt suffocated by her family's constant interference, that my voice was never heard in our own home, and that I was tired of feeling like a guest in my own life. Lauren, in turn, pleaded with me to understand that her family had always been there for her, and that their opinions, while intrusive, came from a place of love. Over the next few weeks, the tension in our household grew. I attempted to set boundaries by gently asking Lauren to talk to her parents about giving us some space. She agreed, and for a short while it seemed like things might improve. However, the reprieve was short-lived. Just a month later, I came home to find a slew of emails from Tom, each one loaded with passive-aggressive remarks about our supposed shortcomings and how we were wasting our youth by not settling down properly. It wasn't just the emails. There were also surprise visits. One evening, I opened the door to find Carol and Mark standing there with groceries, unannounced, insisting on helping out with our weekly dinner. I politely declined, but they left me with a barrage of comments about how family is everything and that we should be grateful for their involvement. I began to feel isolated. My friends noticed I was more withdrawn and anxious. I'd become consumed by the need to defend our personal choices, even in front of those I cared about. At work, I found it hard to concentrate, thinking about how my personal life was being invaded on all fronts. I tried to keep up appearances, but the constant pressure started taking a toll on my mental health. Desperate for a solution, I sought out counseling, hoping to get some clarity on whether I was overreacting or if my feelings were entirely valid. My therapist helped me see that boundaries are crucial in any healthy relationship, and that it wasn't selfish to want a space where Lauren and I could make decisions without external interference. I began documenting every incident, from Carol's rearrangement of our furniture to Tom's demeaning emails, hoping that if I could present a pattern, maybe Lauren would understand the severity of the situation. One evening, after a particularly tense family dinner, where Lauren's parents once again criticized our life choices in front of our friends, I reached my breaking point. I told Lauren that I could no longer endure this constant invasion of our privacy and autonomy. I explained that it wasn't just about me or even just about Lauren. It was about the respect of our relationship as a unit. I needed her to stand up for our decisions, or else I would have to consider living separately until we could find a way to reclaim our independence. Lauren was heartbroken. She admitted that she'd always felt torn between her loyalty to her family and her commitment to our relationship, and that she never realized how deeply this was affecting me until now. We spent hours talking that night with tears on both sides, trying to figure out a way forward. In the end, Lauren promised to have a serious conversation with her parents and set clear boundaries. She acknowledged that while her family's intentions might be loving, their actions were undermining the trust and independence in our relationship. It's been 3 months since that conversation. There have been ups and downs. Lauren did confront her parents, and while they were initially resistant, there has been some improvement. The emails have stopped, and the surprise visits have become less frequent. However, the scars remain. I still wonder if I was too harsh, if maybe I should have compromised more for the sake of family unity. Every time I hear a knock at the door or receive a text from a family member, my heart races with anxiety. So am I the a-hole? I, 30F, have been best friends with Rachel, 31F, since our college days, and over the years we became inseparable, almost like sisters. Our friendship was built on countless shared memories, mutual support, and unwavering loyalty. But recently, I've found myself questioning whether I'm overreacting or if I'm actually justified in setting some long overdue boundaries. And that's what I need your judgment on. Am I the a-hole? The situation began subtly about 2 years ago when I started dating Mark, 32M. At first I was excited to introduce him to my inner circle, and Rachel was naturally thrilled for me. I assumed that our long-standing friendship would allow her to be happy for my new relationship. However, as Mark and I began taking more serious steps, moving in together, planning future vacations, even discussing long-term commitments, I noticed that Rachel's involvement in our lives started to change. It all started with small comments. During our weekly brunches, which used to be solely about catching up on life, Rachel began peppering in remarks about Mark's habits. Is it normal for him to leave his shoes in the hallway? Or, I think he should really start saving more money if he wants to settle down with you. I would laugh these off initially, thinking she was just being her usual, slightly opinionated self. But soon her remarks became more pointed and frequent. I started feeling uncomfortable when our conversations turned into critiques of my relationship rather than genuine catch-ups. One weekend, Mark and I decided to host a small dinner party at our new place, a way to celebrate our first anniversary of moving in together. I was excited to showcase our cozy home and the little touches we'd added to make it ours. I had even planned a special menu and invited a few close friends, including Rachel. Everything was going smoothly until, midway through dinner, Rachel made a comment about our home decor. She said, "I just don't understand why you choose those colors. They're so dull. You need something that really reflects your personality." I felt a twinge of irritation, but I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just trying to be helpful. That same night, after the guests had left, I found myself scrolling through our text messages. Rachel had sent me a long message detailing a laundry list of things she thought Mark and I should change in our home, from the furniture arrangement to the type of art we should display. It felt invasive. I hadn't asked for her input on these personal choices, and her message left me feeling like my autonomy was being eroded. The situation escalated further when Rachel began to make unannounced visits to our apartment. At first, it was casual. She'd stop by on a whim, say hello and leave. But then she started showing up multiple times a week, sometimes staying for hours without even a heads up. Mark tried to be polite, but I could see the discomfort on his face every time she rearranged something or started critiquing even the smallest details. During one visit, while Mark was in the kitchen, Rachel spent almost an hour in our living room, rearranging pillows, muttering about how the layout didn't work. I intervened, asking her to leave, and she responded by saying, "I'm just trying to help you make this place a home. Isn't that what friends do?" But to me, it felt like she was overstepping boundaries that I'd never agreed to. I attempted to talk to Rachel about it privately. I said, "Rachel, I appreciate that you care, but your constant visits and unsolicited advice are starting to feel like an intrusion into my personal space and my relationship with Mark." She became defensive, insisting that she was only trying to help and that I was overreacting. She even accused me of being ungrateful for all the years she had supported me. I tried to explain that supporting a friend is different from controlling every aspect of their life, but she brushed it off with a casual, "You'll get over it," which only made me feel more isolated. The tension reached a boiling point. During a family reunion a few months ago, I had invited Mark and a few friends to join me, and naturally Rachel was there. As the conversation meandered, Rachel launched into a long diatribe about how I should be more assertive about my future plans. "You know, you're wasting your time with Mark if you don't start thinking about what you really want out of life," she declared in front of everyone. I was mortified. Not only was her comment entirely unsolicited, but it also came at a time when I was already feeling vulnerable about the direction my life was taking. Mark looked uncomfortable, and several relatives exchanged awkward glances. I later learned that some of them had been secretly agreeing with her criticisms. That night I barely slept, haunted by the feeling that my relationship and personal decisions were being dissected by someone I once trusted implicitly. After the reunion, I had a long emotional conversation with Mark. He admitted that he'd always felt that our home wasn't entirely ours because of Rachel's constant meddling. He expressed that he respected her as a friend, but her behavior was causing unnecessary friction between us. We decided that I needed to take more decisive action for the sake of our relationship's health. I drafted a heartfelt message to Rachel, explaining how her over-involvement had been affecting my relationship with Mark and me personally. I emphasized that while I valued our friendship, I needed her to respect the boundaries I was setting. I stated clearly that while I would always welcome her support when asked, I expected her to refrain from unannounced visits, unsolicited advice about our home and relationship, and public criticism during family events. I asked her to understand that my decisions, even if they differed from her opinions, were mine to make. I closed the message with, "I love you, but I need space to grow on my own terms." The reaction was not what I expected. Rachel replied with a barrage of defensive messages, accusing me of rejecting her and claiming that I was selfish for not valuing her input. She said things like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me," and maybe, "You should consider that I only have your best interests at heart." Instead of opening a dialogue, her response made it clear that she felt victimized and misunderstood. In the days that followed, our communication dwindled. I tried to salvage the friendship by suggesting a face-to-face meeting, but she kept postponing. And when we finally met, the conversation quickly devolved into an argument where old grievances were aired. Since then, Mark and I have been living a more reclusive life, trying to mend the damage caused by the intrusion. I often find myself second-guessing whether I was too harsh, or if perhaps I should have found a compromise that allowed her a bit more space in our lives. But every time I recall the countless moments when her actions made me feel powerless. In my own home, I reaffirm that my boundaries are necessary for my well-being and the health of my relationship. I now wonder if I'm the a-hole for enforcing these boundaries so strictly. Am I overreacting to someone who only means well? Or am I justified in wanting to protect my personal space and the intimacy of my relationship with Mark? I'm struggling with guilt and the fear of losing a friendship that once meant everything to me, yet I also know that without clear limits, our friendship could continue to harm my relationship and my sense of self. So, am I the a-hole? I, 31M, have been in a committed relationship with Emma, 29F, for 6 years. We've built a life together, sharing dreams, responsibilities, and countless cherished moments. However, over the past year, an old friend of mine, Jessica, 30F, has increasingly intruded into our private life, blurring the line between friendly concern and outright meddling. And now I'm left wondering, am I the a-hole? Jessica and I have known each other since college, and initially, our friendship was one of mutual respect and support. We used to share our successes, our struggles, and even relationship advice, which I always took in stride. I always believed that if someone cared enough to give me their perspective, it was only out of genuine concern. But as time passed, her comments grew more frequent and more personal, particularly regarding my relationship with Emma. It started innocently enough. During casual lunch breaks at work, Jessica would ask, "How's everything going with Emma? You know, sometimes a little surprise date or a thoughtful gesture can really keep a relationship strong." I'd smile and nod, thinking she was just making conversation. But soon these remarks took on a more critical tone. She began offering unsolicited advice, detailing what I should do differently, how Emma might respond better to certain gestures, and even critiquing her choices. First, I dismissed it as a quirky habit of someone who believed they knew what was best. However, when I mentioned it to Emma, she brushed it off as just Jessica being over-enthusiastic. Things took a troubling turn when Jessica started messaging me privately. In these messages, she would recount episodes from her own tumultuous relationships, drawing parallels and subtly suggesting that my relationship was headed down a similar path. One message in particular stuck with me. Maybe if you planned more thoughtful surprises or paid attention to the little things, Emma wouldn't feel so neglected. You know, actions speak louder than words. I tried to see it as harmless advice, but the underlying tone made me uncomfortable. It felt as if she was implying I was failing as a partner, even though I had always strived to give Emma my best. Matters worsened when Jessica began showing up uninvited. At first, it was occasional drop-ins during work lunches. Then she started visiting on weekends when I'd planned a quiet day with Emma. One Saturday afternoon, Emma and I had arranged to have a picnic in a local park, a simple escape from our busy routines. As we were setting up, Jessica arrived unexpectedly, armed with a bag of snacks and an agenda to help make the day perfect. I politely asked her to wait while Emma and I enjoyed our time, but she brushed it off, saying she was just there to lend a hand. Emma, caught between being polite and asserting her need for space, ended up inviting her to stay a little longer than I was comfortable with. The situation reached a boiling point during our mutual friend's birthday party. I had organized a small gathering at our apartment, planning it as a celebration for our friend and a chance for Emma and I to unwind. Halfway through the evening, while I was busy in the kitchen, Jessica started loudly criticizing our home decor and even questioned Emma's recent career decisions in front of several guests. The remarks were sharp and uncalled for, leaving Emma visibly hurt and our friends awkwardly glancing between us. I immediately stepped in, asking Jessica to leave, but not before she made a snide remark about how not everyone can have a perfect relationship without a little outside guidance. That incident left a lasting mark, Emma and I spent the following days in tense silence. Emma admitted she felt undermined and disrespected, not just by Jessica's comments, but by the fact that someone I considered a friend was actively trying to mold our relationship according to her own standards. Determined to salvage what was left of our private space, I decided it was time to confront the issue head-on. I reached out to Jessica for a private conversation. I told her, "Jessica, I appreciate that you care about me and my relationship with Emma, but your constant input is starting to feel invasive. I need you to respect that Emma and I have our way of doing things." She responded defensively, saying, "I'm only trying to help. I've seen what happens when you don't. Pay attention to the little details." I explained that while her advice might have been valuable in the past, it was now overstepping boundaries that we had not consented to. I made it clear that from now on, any advice would need to be asked for directly. Otherwise, I needed her to trust that Emma and I could handle our own issues. Jessica's reaction was less than cooperative. Instead of acknowledging my concerns, she accused me of being ungrateful and dismissive of her friendship. She texted later that night, "If you really valued our friendship, you'd understand that I'm trying to help you avoid mistakes." I felt caught in a bind. How could someone who cared so much also be so hurtful by their constant interference? In the weeks that followed, I tried to distance myself from Jessica, limiting our interactions to professional settings and strictly group contexts. I even suggested to Emma that perhaps we needed to reconsider the role Jessica played in our lives. Emma, who had initially defended her friend out of habit, eventually admitted that she too felt uncomfortable with the constant commentary on our personal lives. It wasn't just me being criticized, it was a shared sentiment that our privacy was being eroded by someone who refused to respect our boundaries. Determined to rebuild our relationship free from unwanted interference, Emma and I drafted a message together addressed to Jessica. We wrote, "We value the friendship we once shared, but the continuous unsolicited advice about our relationship is causing more harm than good. We need space to navigate our lives without outside commentary. Please respect our decision to handle things on our own terms." We sent the message fully expecting a mature response. Instead, Jessica replied with a flood of accusations. She said we were being ungrateful, that we were selfish for not considering her perspective, and that we were throwing away years of friendship for the sake of independence. The reply was a stark reminder of how deeply entrenched her views were, and how unwilling she was to accept that her involvement was no longer welcome. Now, a few weeks later, Emma and I are slowly reclaiming the intimacy and independence that once defined our relationship. We're attending therapy together to mend the rift that this entire ordeal has caused, and we're learning to navigate our boundaries with renewed clarity. Yet, I can't help but wonder if I'm being too strict, if perhaps I should be more accommodating of friends who think they have our best interests at heart. But every time I recall the intrusive moments, the public criticisms, and the constant undermining of our choices, I know that something had to change. So, am I the a-hole? I, 32M, have been with my wife, Sarah, 31F, for 8 years, married for 4. Sarah is an incredible woman, strong, independent, and kind, but she has one major blind spot: her younger sister, Emma, 27F. Emma has always been spoiled by their parents, and Sarah has always played the role of the protective older sister, covering for her mistakes, making excuses, and bailing her out whenever she gets into trouble. I never liked how Emma took advantage of Sarah's kindness, but I kept my opinions to myself for the sake of family harmony. Things took a turn when Sarah and I bought our first home together last year. It was a major milestone for us, something we had worked hard for. Emma, on the other hand, had been struggling. She had quit her job, her third in 2 years, broken up with yet another boyfriend, and had nowhere to live. Naturally, she turned to Sarah for help. Sarah pleaded with me to let Emma move in for just a few months until she got back on her feet. I hesitated, but eventually I agreed, under very clear conditions. She had to contribute to household expenses, clean up after herself, and actively look for a new job and place to stay. Sarah assured me it would be temporary. Fast forward 10 months and Emma was still living with us. She hadn't made a single rent payment, barely lifted a finger around the house, and made no visible effort to find a job. Every time I brought it up, Sarah would defend her. She's just going through a rough time. She needs support, not pressure. She'll figure it out soon. Meanwhile, Emma treated our home like her personal playground, bringing over friends late at night, leaving dishes piled up in the sink, blasting music at all hours, and even using our car without asking. The final straw came when I arrived home, one evening, to find our living room filled with empty bottles and strangers lounging on our couch. Emma had thrown a party on a weeknight without telling us. When I confronted her, she just laughed it off and said, "Chill, it's not a big deal." I snapped. I told her she had exactly 1 month to move out, no more excuses. Sarah was upset, but reluctantly agreed. Emma didn't take me seriously at first, but when she saw I wasn't backing down, she went into full-blown victim mode. She started crying to Sarah about how unfair I was being, how she had nowhere else to go, and how I never liked her anyway. Sarah wavered. She asked if we could give Emma just a little more time. I stood my ground. "She's had 10 months, Sarah. It's time." When the deadline came, Emma still hadn't found a job or a place to live. I told her she needed to leave that weekend. That's when Sarah dropped a bombshell. She wanted to let Emma stay a little longer, and if I insisted on making her leave, she would stay with Emma at their parents' house for a while. I was shocked. I felt completely blindsided. This was our home, and I had been more than patient. Now I was the bad guy for enforcing a boundary we had both agreed on. Sarah packed a bag and left with Emma that weekend. She texted me that she needed time to think and that she couldn't just abandon her sister. I told her I understood her love for Emma, but she was choosing to enable her at the expense of our marriage. That was 2 weeks ago. Sarah is still staying with her parents, and we've only spoken a handful of times. Every conversation ends in an argument. She thinks I'm being heartless. I think she's being manipulated. So, am I the a-hole? I, 32F, have been the primary caregiver for my father, Robert, 68 Mem, ever since he suffered a debilitating stroke 3 years ago. The stroke left him with limited mobility and cognitive issues that have only worsened over time. My older brother, James, 35M, has always maintained a certain distance from the family, and while he occasionally offers verbal support, he's rarely been present for the day-to-day challenges that come with caring for Dad. Initially, I tried to include him in decisions regarding Dad's care, hoping that sharing the responsibility would also mend our fractured sibling relationship. However, every attempt to communicate with him ended in lukewarm responses or outright indifference. In the first year after Dad's stroke, I rearranged my life completely. I quit my full-time job and started working part-time, dedicating nearly every spare moment to ensuring Dad was as comfortable as possible. I managed his medications, attended all his doctor's appointments, and even took charge of his finances. I knew my father deserved the best care, and I was determined not to let him down, even if it meant sacrificing my own career goals and personal life. My small apartment was transformed into a makeshift care center, bedside monitors, specialized chairs, and even a rearranged living space to accommodate a wheelchair. It wasn't easy, but I believed that my father's well-being was worth every sacrifice. As the months turned into years, Dad's condition stabilized but remained fragile. I had set up a routine: early morning physiotherapy sessions, daily visits from a part-time nurse I arranged, and regular checkups with his neurologist. I would call James multiple times a week, asking for updates on how he could help or simply to share news about Dad, but his responses were always vague. "I'm busy," "I'll get by," or sometimes just silence. It felt like I was carrying the entire weight of our father's care alone. Then, about 6 months ago, things took a dramatic turn. Dad fell at home and broke his hip, a serious injury that required emergency surgery and a prolonged rehabilitation period. The fall was a wake-up call. I rushed him to the hospital and spent the next few days coordinating with doctors, insurance, and physical therapists. I made swift decisions about his surgery and post-operative care, choices I believed were in his best interest, given the urgency of the situation. I even arranged for a temporary transfer to a skilled nursing facility for intensive rehab. Throughout this crisis, I continued to update James, sending him detailed messages about Dad's condition, the surgical procedure, and the rehabilitation plan. Yet, when I asked for his input, he replied with vague assurances that he trusted my judgment. However, once Dad was stabilized, James began to voice strong objections. He claimed I had overstepped by making all the decisions without properly consulting him, accusing me of being controlling and selfish. He argued that Dad deserved a more balanced approach, one that incorporated both of our viewpoints, rather than having one sibling unilaterally decide his fate. I tried to explain that time was of the essence, and that waiting for consensus could have jeopardized Dad's recovery. James countered that I was using Dad's frailty as an excuse to push him out of the picture and to assume complete control over decisions, including financial matters and long-term care plans. The conflict escalated quickly. James started texting our extended family, painting a picture that I was taking over Dad's care solely for my own benefit and that I was excluding him from important decisions. Soon my phone was flooded with messages from relatives urging me to reconsider my approach and to let James have a say. My inbox was filled with heated debates from family members who felt torn between supporting the status quo and siding with James's demands for shared responsibility. I even received calls from Dad's lawyer, who was brought in by our family's legal counsel to review the decision-making process regarding Dad's care. The situation was not only emotionally exhausting, but also legally complex. Despite all the backlash, Dad himself has expressed gratitude for my dedication. In quiet moments, when he's lucid enough, he tells me he feels safe and cared for, that he's grateful I'm there with him. His words, though infrequent, have been a source of solace during these turbulent times, yet every time I see a message from James or hear from a family member questioning my decisions, I'm plagued by doubt. Am I being overly controlling? Or am I simply doing what is necessary for Dad's survival and comfort? I spent countless nights wrestling with these thoughts, torn between my desire to honor Dad's needs and my longing for a more united family. I've sought advice from a counselor who specializes in family dynamics, and the consensus seems to be that setting boundaries and taking decisive action isn't inherently wrong. But in the quiet moments, I still worry that by taking full control, I might be further alienating James and tearing our family apart. In the aftermath of the hip fracture, I drafted a long, carefully considered message to James. I expressed my love for him and my wish to have him more involved, but I also made it clear that Dad's care was too urgent and delicate to be subjected to endless debates. I urged him to step up and be present, to help share the responsibility rather than criticize every decision I made. His reply was brief and filled with resentment. He accused me of monopolizing the situation and of caring more about control than our father's well-being. Now the family is split. Some relatives support my decisive actions during the crisis, while others believe that I've effectively sidelined James and that I should have done more to involve him. I'm left questioning whether I'm the a-hole for taking full control of our father's care, even when I believed it was in his best interest. I don't want to lose my brother, but every day I watch Dad struggle with the challenges of his condition, and I know that delays or disagreements could have serious consequences for his health. So am I the a-hole? I, 36F, have been running our family business for nearly a decade now, ever since our father passed away unexpectedly 5 years ago. Growing up, my older brother, Michael, 39M, was always the hands-on one in the family, the one who would fix things and solve problems with a seemingly endless well of confidence. Our father trusted Michael with many of the family's day-to-day affairs, and as a result, Michael always felt he had a right to be involved in everything. When our father died, he left the business to both of us, expecting that Michael's experience would continue to guide the company. However, I was determined to honor Dad's legacy and make decisions in the best interest of the company, and that meant doing things differently. For years, I've been the one working tirelessly behind the scenes, negotiating contracts, meeting with clients, and implementing modern strategies that have actually turned the business around. Michael, on the other hand, seemed more interested in reliving the old days. He would show up unannounced at meetings, insist on revisiting decisions that had already been made, and even openly criticize the new directions I was taking. At first I tried to keep the peace. I believed that since we both shared the responsibility, I should at least give him a chance to express his ideas. But gradually, his interference began to hamper progress. The situation reached a boiling point about 6 months ago. We were preparing for a major investor meeting that could secure a crucial line of credit for expanding our operations. I had spent weeks putting together a modern, comprehensive presentation that highlighted our recent achievements and future potential. On the morning of the meeting, Michael called me, demanding to see my presentation. He started making changes on the fly, insisting that we revert to the old formula that had worked in the past. I tried to explain that the market had changed and that investors were expecting innovation, not nostalgia. Michael dismissed my concerns, saying that I was overcomplicating things and that a simple, straightforward pitch would be far more effective. Tensions escalated when, during the investor meeting, Michael interrupted my presentation multiple times. He interjected with comments like, "You're leaving out important details, and this plan sounds too radical." The investors exchanged confused glances as Michael's voice grew louder and more insistent. I felt mortified and helpless, as my carefully crafted plan was overshadowed by his outdated ideas. The meeting ended awkwardly, and while we managed to secure the credit line, it was clear that the investors' confidence in our management had been shaken. After the meeting, I confronted Michael in the office. I told him, "This business needs to move forward. Our father built it on solid principles, but those principles must evolve with the times. You can't keep dragging us back to the past just because you're more comfortable with the old ways." Michael's eyes flashed with anger. He argued that I was abandoning Dad's legacy and that his experience should count for something. "I built this business with him, and I know what it takes to keep it running," he insisted. I countered by saying that while his experience was valuable, clinging to outdated methods was putting our future at risk. Our argument didn't end there. Over the next few weeks, Michael began contacting our key employees, trying to rally them to his side. He complained to several board members that I was being authoritarian and excluding him from important decisions. Some employees who had grown accustomed to my forward-thinking strategies were reluctant to side with him. Still, his persistent campaign created a palpable tension within the office. Meetings turned into battlegrounds, and I began receiving messages questioning my leadership. Every time I tried to implement a new strategy, Michael would counter with, "Are you sure this is what Dad would have wanted?" I tried to have a serious conversation with Michael, inviting him to join me in strategizing for the business rather than undermining my decisions. I said, "We're in this together, but we have to agree on a way to work as a team. Dad wouldn't have wanted us to fight like this." Unfortunately, Michael dismissed my suggestions, claiming that I was trying to take full control of the company without giving him a proper role. He accused me of being cold-hearted and ungrateful, and even threatened to take legal action to force a re-evaluation of the business structure if I didn't step aside. His words stung, and the pain of feeling betrayed by someone who used to be my partner in so many childhood memories was overwhelming. The fallout from our confrontation spread quickly throughout the company. Employees started choosing sides, and what had once been a family business now felt like a fractured enterprise. I received emails from longtime staff members urging me to fix this situation before it destroys everything we've built. Meanwhile, Michael's supporters argued that I had become too rigid and that I wasn't honoring our father's memory. It's been an agonizing period of sleepless nights and relentless self-doubt as I try to balance the legacy of our father with the practical needs of a modern business. In my heart, I know I'm doing what's best for the company's future. The credit line we secured, though marred by the chaos of that meeting, was a testament to the direction I'm pushing us towards. I firmly believe that our father would be proud of the progress we've made, even if Michael refuses to acknowledge that the world has changed. Yet every day I grapple with the question, am I the a-hole for sidelining my own brother in what should be a joint family effort? Did I cross the line by enforcing boundaries that, in his eyes, betrayed his loyalty to our father's traditional ways? I'm left wondering if there's any way to mend this rift without sacrificing the innovative vision that's keeping the business alive. I truly want us to be a team, but Michael's unwillingness to evolve makes that seem increasingly impossible. Every decision, every board meeting, and every conversation is now tinged with a deep-seated bitterness that I fear might eventually tear our family apart entirely. So, am I the a-hole?